and believing that learning about something is the same as enacting it, and it's not. That's why it has to be action first. How do I use that in my life? Give me something to apply it to. And that's why with the confidence thing, choose promises that you will never break to yourself. I'm going to get up on time for the next month. I am not going to hit the snooze button. If you do that and you look back in a month and you go, oh my God, that's the first time I've done that in forever, maybe. That's a big win. And you can do the James Clear thing. We'll write it on a board. We'll track it, what gets like measured, etc., etc. But the main thing is just keep promises to yourself. And that is a good way to go from, here is an insight I learned about, I want to do breathwork, cold plunge, go to the gym, fast until 12 midday, get up on time, sunlight in the eyes, and then whatever it is, right, that you want to do, turn it into a promise. Don't break the promise.
Who've gone through that, and I've had a lot of friends who've gone through business failures. The ones I admire the most are the ones it's the way they've dealt with that. And some of them have thought, well, I can't change that. I can't. So all I can do is change the way I approach the next step and move on. And if you just dwell on failure, what does that mean? How does that reflect on me? Then you'd never. Yeah, you'd never move on. So I think it's our own attitude to failure that's quite important.
What you need is to get after it. And I want you to get desperate to make that decision. Why? Because our obsessions become our possessions. What you obsess about most regularly, you will eventually possess in your life. The challenge for most people, sisters and brothers, is that we obsess on the things we're fearful of, what we don't have, what we're worried about. And then we end up possessing those things over and over again, rather than programming ourselves to become obsessed with what we want, what our dreams are, what we believe we deserve. When we become obsessed about those things, long term, we end up possessing those things.
This is why Ryan Holiday says always be working on a book or always be working on a project. He's someone who's published at this point like 13 or 14 books, and he's extremely prolific because he's always working on a project. He never creates these big gaps of time where he's not working on something, because if you're not actively working on something, then essentially you're consuming a lot of input, but you're not channeling it towards anything constructive. It's wasted energy, and it's the opposite of applied learning. A lot of times we're learning all sorts of stuff, but we're learning stuff that's not filtered toward a goal, and so it's not applied, so we can't use it. So it's honestly wasteful. We're filling our heads with information, but not knowledge and wisdom.
Struggling like that, again, you create these vicious circles, so you don't sleep very well, and you wake up the next day just more tired than you were when you went to bed, and you're irritable, and your body is filled with cortisol and adrenaline, and you don't eat well and put nutritious food in your body, and you forget to exercise. So yeah, all these negative things start compounding. I was in a pretty bad state. But to put things in perspective, again, I did try and kind of be realistic. There were people in the world going through much trickier things and their business falling apart. But when it's you and you built your whole self-worth around it, it feels like everything is falling apart and the world is ending.
The thing about your mind is that it loves what is familiar, and it will go for what is familiar. And if what is familiar is procrastinating, messing about, not applying yourself, feeling uncomfortable in public and not believing in yourself, you have got to make that completely unfamiliar. And what you have to make that is unfamiliar is familiar. Working hard, believing in yourself, putting in the hours, deciding to love it. And Muhammad Ali said, it's people's fear that stops them taking on challenges. I told myself I was the greatest before I even was. I believed in myself. And then guess what? I became the greatest. So what a concept. He told himself he was the best, and he became the best, but he didn't just go, yeah, I'm the greatest me. He trained, he worked out, he was disciplined, he believed he was the best. And I worked with the top of their game, top CEOs, top actors, top everything, top rock stars. They all have to tell themselves they are the best, because what's the opposite of that? Oh, I'm just average, I'm not really good enough, I can't really do this, it's too hard, it requires too much commitment. I just showed you whatever you tell your mind it believes. So tell it better things.
I now respond to situations in life instead of reacting. And that seems like, what is he talking about? But when you stop and think about it, we have so much stimulation in life. So many things happen, and most of us react. You know, your first thought, someone cuts you up in traffic, you honk your horn. Your partner says something slightly passive aggressive, you snap straight back at them into a big argument. What if there was a slight pause, a fraction of a second, where you held and you thought and you kicked in, your awareness enabled you to respond to that stimulation rather than reacting. Another is, a good analogy is going to the gym. We talked about the physical and the mental, and our minds and our bodies are very interconnected. But we go to the gym and we lift weights, and that resistance builds up the muscle, the strength in our body. Meditation is like going to the mental gym. It's a way of building up the strength of your mind. It enables in everyday life to be more aware, to improve our attention. And my goodness, we need that muscle of attention in this modern age, because never have we been assailed with more noise and stimulation from social media to billboards to TV. It's coming at us constantly. And one of the most valuable skills in the 21st century is to be able to decide where and how and when we put our attention.
And it's really understanding that you have a choice in how you show up with the world. You have a choice in how you feel about a situation. You can choose a different story. Mum, to be fair to Mum, to see that any one of us can change at any age, right? We can make subtle choices, small things that make a big difference.
Well, I wouldn't invest in anybody that had multiple startups.
Yeah.
Because if I'd had 3 businesses going at the same time as Moonpig, and Moonpig was going badly, you focus on the one that's going well because it makes you feel better. So,
True.
and then the person, then they turn around to the investors who put money into the third one, and they say, no, I've given up with that one. I'm off to. So there is no way. I mean, when I invest in a business, I would make sure that there is a clause that says that the founder shareholders have to be 100% focused on that. They're not allowed to have more than a 5% stake in another unlimited company.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's laughable.
Yeah.
Absolutely laughable that people come along and they go, yeah, I've got 3 ideas and I'd like you to invest in this one, but I've got those just in case that one doesn't work.
Yeah. For me as well, I tend to.
Act first.
Okay.
You have to lead with action, because if you are someone that deals with a crippling sense of insufficiency, your ability to discount any good thoughts you have in your mind is going to be so strong. If you try and lead with positivity first, I need to think it, wish it, believe it, and I will achieve it, your set point of negativity is going to just crush that into the ground. I'm speaking from personal experience, right? As the guy that was chronically unconfident and still has, the imposter syndrome that does creep in. You have to start with action. It needs to be, okay, what would have had to have happened in a week's time for me to look back on that week and find pride in myself? Pride's seen as something that you should be ashamed of. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. But David Goggins, I did an episode with him, and he said pride is something that everybody misses. That having pride in your name, your performance, the way that you show up for other people is something that you can do. But you need to do something that is worthy of being prideful about, right? What would have had to have happened in a week for you to look back on that week with pride? Okay, maybe stop breaking promises to yourself. When you say, I'm going to wake up tomorrow at 7 a.m. and when the option comes to hit the snooze button, don't do it. There's one win that you've got for the day. That's action, right? And it is just, it's tried to say the Peterson clean your room thing, but the reason that works is that you start with the smallest ever step and you expand out from there. You want to become a writer. You want to leave your job and become a writer. Okay, can you commit to writing 1 blog post on Substack per week for the next 3 weeks? That would make you feel like less of a loser if you did that. Action has to come first if you're the sort of person who is chronically unconfident, because you will drag your sense of identity behind you. Mark Manson says that identity lags behind our status by about 1 to 2 years. So for both me and you, in 2 years' time will go, I understand why I was in LA that day, and look back. Start with action and make small promises to yourself that you don't break. If you had a friend and every single time that you and your friend decided that you were going to go out for dinner, that friend either showed up 2 hours late or didn't show up at all, you would stop trusting that person. That is the relationship that you have with yourself. You need to be able to trust your own word. And a lot of us don't, because life is very convenient and it is easy for people to not stick to the promises that they set themselves, because our ability to be idealistic is always going to outstrip reality's ability to deliver that to us. As soon as you posit an ideal, you then begin to compare yourself to that ideal. And true hell is when the person that you are meets the person that you could have been.